the quality of life that an individual leads influences very much the way the karma in their chart manifests. The planets represent our karma. They kind of spell it out. They describe it and they show, you know, when certain types of karma are going to come and visit at what times and so forth, kind of like a little roadmap into our own future. So, and past, and to understand our own past. And one example is that the 12th house is the house of ashrams, prisons, and hospitals. So if a person has some karma coming to them from a planet, say in the 12th house, then depending on the quality of being, whether that person is a very sattvic person, which means like a pure person, or if they're more of a rajasic person, or if they're more of a tamasic person, this will determine whether that karma coming from the 12th house will come in the form of, if they're tamasic, it could come in the form of imprisonment, which is very, very, very unpleasant. But if they're rajasic, it could come in the form of a hospitalization, which, like a prison, it keeps you out of activity, right? Or like an ashram, if they're a sattvic person, it's like being in the ashram, where they have to be so disciplined and so on the program, and they can't engage in a lot of worldly fun things, happy schmappy things. They have to kind of stay focused all the time like that and stay inward. If the soul is a sattvic soul, they at least get the chance to have some autonomy over their choices. So you can have 3 different people with the same affliction, and their being ends up, their life story ends up going 3 different directions. So when I say, how do we handle karma, karmic returns, this is what I'm referring to, is how do we set ourselves up so that the inner constructs of self are so well organized that when the karmic return comes, the result is that we handle it with grace and success. And as you know, being in the ashram is an extremely spiritually powerful location. Being in the ashram, when I say the ashram, it's like the monastery, or being in the church, if you want to think of it that way, being in the church, that we're in that holy sacred ground. So in the holy sacred ground, there's a lot of things that you don't do, right? You have to maintain reverence for the depth of that. This information being received by the astral and causal levels of the physiology, this is the healing. The causal body particularly, I'm seeing, it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting what I'm seeing happening. And I bow down to all of you because it's so exquisite when we're in these sessions, all the new information that comes out. But the causal body, as you know, it has this tide that rolls back and forth between the whole causal body and then all the regions of the causal body. And depending on how much awareness, clear, lucid awareness is at the causal level of self, will determine how much access we have to the potential that's at the causal level of the physiology. Causal body is where we access our potential. And there's infinite potential in the absolute. But if the awareness is just kind of foggy and sort of only sort of seeing the bare outlines of what's going on down there, what happens is wholeness. And then when it comes down to the parts, we tend to see 3 parts. 3, it's simple, but we see it in terms of 3. Now, if we were looking at the causal, if we were viewing, if our point of perspective was, say, some kind of godly point of perspective, then we would see the wholeness. And when it goes down to its parts, we'd see millions and billions and trillions of little parts. But the 3 would be contained in all those millions of billions of trillions, because the 3 is like a fundamental. Well, there's another fundamental that's 5. There's a 5 fundamental, and it correlates with 5 senses, 5 elements, etc. And so what I'm seeing happening in the causal field is that this element that I would associate with earth energy. And of course, we're working a lot with earth energy in this particular healing set because the immune system is a physiological manifestation. It's a material manifestation. And our bodies are more than 50% earth element. So we're working with the earth element here. And the beauty of the earth element is that it's very stable and strong. And so what I was seeing happening is the quality of purity that sets those individuals who navigate their karma effectively and successfully apart from those individuals who get slapped upside the head has to do with how much purity is integrated. And the purity element, I'm seeing it together with the earth element, which is stable. So what that means is the purity is being at the causal level, which is where we structure the material. Everything that structures up at the material has its foundation at the finest manifest level of self. That down at that level, these are coming together. That the earth element is coming together with the purity element so that the actions that make their way out to the surface of behavior align with the quality of purity. Right? So the karma comes, something comes, maybe you lose something or something, but then how do you handle that process? How do you handle the losing of something? Well, there are different ways. You could lose your temper. You could cry, or you could become afraid that somehow things are going to go very bad. Now you're going to lose something else. I lost one thing. I guess I'm going to lose everything. Or, right? There are all different ways of handling that situation. Or the purity element, which is that when you're in the ashram, naturally letting go is part of the spiritual process. And we enjoy and embrace doing so in a way which is aligned with Dharma. That means we don't let go to the point of self-sacrifice and damaging or hurting ourselves, but we do let go what needs to be let go so that progress forward in the expansion of the process of expanding consciousness is able to happen gracefully and successfully. Downsizing. Downsizing feels so good. This is purity conjoining with the earth element so that it has free reign. It is allowed to move all the way to the surface of expression flawlessly, gracefully, in a blessed and sacred manner. And what I'm seeing with this is the most tremendous and beautiful flow of love. Evidently, we're going into the field of purity here. Evidently, part of the story of purity is purity of the heart. And it's a great purification for the heart, for everyone. It looks like our healing collective. In our healing collective, we know that when our healing collective makes a step like this, of this accelerated expression and expansion of the capacity to love with extreme purity, extremely innocent, sweet, unrestrained or unconditional quality of love, that we're upgrading our entire healing collective. I'm just watching it, stabilizing,